We're going to talk about balls. Shiny, glowy, green and purple balls that we like to throw at other people. Because cannonballs are great, but some are greater than others. When they were first introduced, a lot of people were worried that they were going to greatly break the game and that every cursed cannonball fired at them was going to hit them. This just really isn't the case. A lot of the time the cursed cannonballs fired at you are going to miss, and even if they do hit you, they're not going to hit you at the most beneficial time for the other team firing them at you. What we're going to talk about is what the cursed cannonballs do, when you should use them, and how to use them at the most effective time. I just want to remind you that this is my personal experience, and mostly I solo sloop, which I do live over on Twitch most days of the month. Links below. Hopefully you can adapt some of the theories and practices that I use to work for you. Anything that I talk about doing solo can be done much more effectively with a crew. I am going to mostly talk about doing this from a solo standpoint, but I will chime in with some things that the crew can do better than someone that's solo. Cursed cannonballs come in two flavors. One affects the ship directly, and one affects players directly. The one that affects the ship directly is purple, and the one that affects the player directly is green. Between the 9 cursed cannonballs that there are currently, they do a wide array of things. The anchor ball drops the anchor. The ballast ball lowers the ship deep into the water. This allows water to come in through all the holes that are above the water level. The helm ball locks the helm so you can't turn. The rigging ball raises your rigging up so that you lose all speed. The barrel ball stops you accessing all of your supplies on your ship. And the peace ball stops you from using your cannons. Those are the ones that affect the ship. The ones that affect players are the jig ball, which makes you dance. The sleep ball, which makes you sleep. The venom ball, which causes you to take damage and blurs your vision. The limp ball, which makes you walk slow and stops you from jumping. And the grog ball, which gets you drunk and makes you start vomiting. I'm going to go into a bit more depth about the cursed cannonballs, how long they last for, what you should use them for, what I use them for, and at the end, we're going to have a tier list. You know the basics about the cursed cannonballs now. You know what they basically do. What you need to know now is how and when you should use them in PvP. Using an anchor ball is dependent on the ship that you're using it against. My personal favorite thing to do with the anchor ball against another ship is anchoring them so that they're positioned away where they can't hit me with their cannons, but I have cannons on them so I can lay down some heavy cannon fire. It works great against sloops and brig. It doesn't really work very well against galleons if you're on a sloop. However, if you're on a brig or a galleon, it works pretty well. Often though, the anchor ball is used to either stop a ship so you can board it, or so that you can catch it up. The best use I've found with the anchor ball, other than using it on the offense, is in situations where I have a run-up. It happens quite frequently that a ship will start sailing away just to avoid you the entire time. You do get the occasional time to get a cannon shot on them. Landing one regular cannonball on them just isn't very effective at all. If you can land an anchor ball on them, that will serve you greater than landing a regular cannonball or any other cannonball for that matter. If I do manage to land an anchor ball on a ship, I'll try and follow up by ramming them, anchoring myself, giving myself a static spawn point if I do die, and then controlling their ship from there. The last thing anybody wants to do is spend their entire session chasing someone that initiated the fight with them. The ballast ball, in my opinion, is the most valuable cursed cannonball that you can have. It lowers the ship into the water deep enough that any holes that the ship has will start taking on water. This is really effective against the galleon, and as a solo player, if I have a ballast ball, I feel it really evens the odds in being able to sink a galleon. It does work against sloops, and it does work against brig, but no way near as effectively as it does against galleons. If you're going to use a ballast ball against any ship, make sure that you've hit the ship a lot before you fire the ballast ball. You want to make it so that they haven't had time to repair all of the holes, and on a galleon, if you're aiming for the top deck, a lot of the time the galleon won't actually repair those holes. So when you follow up with a ballast ball, most of the time, it's game over. If you're hit with a ballast ball, I wouldn't bother trying to repair. I would just bail until the effects of the ballast ball are finished. The ballast ball duration lasts for 7 seconds. The rigging ball raises the sails of any ship. It raises them all at the same time at an extremely fast speed. The duration of the rigging ball is around 8 seconds, and you can't lower the sails until this duration is finished. I prefer the rigging ball to the anchor ball because the anchor ball is temporary and you can raise the anchor very quickly, whereas with the rigging ball, you just have to deal with it. And if you don't know the duration of the cursed cannonballs, that can cause players to hang around and not do other things that they could be doing while they're waiting for the effects to wear off. The downside to the rigging ball is that the ship still has maneuverability in the fact that they can turn. Using a rigging ball and following up with a helm ball is a great combination if you're part of a crew. Doesn't work so well if you're solo. Their helm ball, in my opinion, is mostly useless. You're not going to be in many situations where a ship is sailing towards something that they need to avoid and you can land a helm ball to cause them a problem. It does happen, but most of the time I would just use a helm ball just to temporarily get them off their cannons, because every cursed cannonball makes you let go of the helm, the rigging, and the cannons, not the ladder though. The helm ball lasts for 15 seconds. So if you are going to couple a helm ball or a rigging ball, start with the helm ball first, because the rigging ball doesn't last as long as the helm ball. If you do only have a helm ball, you're far better off firing a normal cannonball at the area where their helm is, because one, you'll damage the helm for a lot longer than the helm ball would last for. Two, you might get a kill, and three, you may knock a player off. And these are all far better than just relying on the helm ball doing its job. The barrel ball is another situational ball, in the fact that you need to really decide when it's going to do the most damage. If you've put a lot of holes into a ship, that's when you should use a barrel ball, because the players on board the ship may not have restocked themselves up. You are gambling when you use it, and there is a big chance that players may well hang around waiting for the barrels to reopen rather than doing other duties that they should be doing on the ship, like bailing or using other supplies that they have already on themselves. The barrel ball also lasts 15 seconds, so don't just fire it and forget. Make sure you follow up with normal cannon shots. Remember that each player can only hold 5 planks. The peace ball stops the other ship from using their cannons whatsoever, but it only lasts for 5 seconds, which in my opinion is not long enough to really capitalize on it when you're playing solo. If you're on a multi-cannon ship, so if you're on the brig or the galleon, make sure you use good communication with your team to get them to let you know when they're firing a peace ball. If you do that between yourselves, you'll be able to chain the peace balls to be able to lock down their cannons for a longer amount of time. However, using a normal cannonball and just aiming for their cannons and going for a kill is going to be, in my opinion, far more effective, as most of the time when you're PvPing in Sea of Thieves and generally any other game, you're looking for what they call a pick or a pick off. You're trying to kill their crew members to make them less effective. Once you get a pick off, that's when you start a bit more of an aggressive offense, i.e. trying to board them. Those are the cursed cannonballs that affect the ship. We're going to talk about the cursed cannonballs that directly affect players. These cursed cannonballs are green and they activate on players via splash damage. I'm not entirely sure of the exact range, but I would go with general cannonball splash damage. If it was going to do damage to someone, that's what the active range of the cursed cannonball would be. Although it does feel a little bit larger than that, try and be as accurate as you can and aim directly for a player if you see one. If there are no players that you can see, you want to aim for their cannons, or you want to aim for the helm, or you want to aim for places where you've already hit with regular cannonballs to disrupt them from repairing, from shooting their cannons at you and steering their ship. The jig ball, when it lands near another player, will make you dance as if you've done the dance emote yourself. It only lasts for 5 seconds, but it's great for disrupting the ship. Additionally, if you combo it with a teammate on a multi-cannon ship, they fire off a jig ball and you cannon over shortly afterwards, making sure that you don't land the same time as the jig ball does. It should allow you to board the ship a lot easier. Again, I much rather combo a normal cannonball on their ladders than use a crowd control cursed cannonball like the jig ball. The jig ball may be effective elsewhere. The sleep ball works very similar to the jig ball. There's key differences though. That's that the jig ball makes you stand upright, makes you move so that you can be seen a bit easier if you aren't just standing still, because a static target is a lot harder to see in some situations. And the sleep ball makes you lay down, and it makes you a lot harder to hit. Being hit with a sleep ball is safer than being hit with a jig ball. If a sleep ball or a jig ball hit you and you get knocked off your ship into the water, the effect is cancelled as soon as you land in the water. I would use the sleep ball the same as I would use the jig ball. Both the jig ball and the sleep ball last for 5 seconds. The grog ball, in my opinion, is balanced similar to the jig ball and the sleep ball. The grog ball lasts for 8 seconds. It makes it difficult for you to be able to control yourself. So if you're repairing the ship, there are times where you'll be most of the way through the repair, and because you're too drunk from the grog ball, you'll move away. It doesn't make it impossible to be able to repair the ship or fire the cannons or steer the ship, but it does make it difficult. In the test that I did, it lasted 8 seconds and I was only sick 1. But if you are sick on a crew member, they usually make your crew member sick as well. so it can spread across the ship sometimes. The Venom Ball has some hidden uses that people don't really think about. With the Venom Ball, it lasts for 15 seconds, which is quite a long time. The best time to use it is when it's dark, because the Venom Ball makes your screen go dark itself, so it already makes it harder to see. Most ships turn off their lights, so they're already at a disadvantage as soon as it hits. The Venom Ball also chunks away 30% HP over time, over the 15 seconds, which leaves you vulnerable to being sniped with an Eye of Reach, because the Eye of Reach does 70% damage. And the chances are, you're also going to get hit by normal cannon fire in that, so it's going to take you even lower. Lastly, we're going to talk about the Limp Ball. The Limp Ball slows you down and stops you from jumping. Being slowed down in the heat of battle, when you're used to going at a certain speed, will cause people to panic. Not being able to jump will stop people from being able to board your ship effectively. It's great to use against the ship that's trying to keg you. They'll often make a mistake. Overall though, the Limp Ball just creates a bit of space for you. It's almost a bit of a fight reset sometimes. Other than the Ballast Ball, there isn't really a Cursed Cannonball that on its own will turn the fight. There are definitely times where you can use a Cursed Cannonball effectively, but even then, using a regular well-placed cannonball does the job just as effectively, if not more effective. For example, if you land a regular cannonball on the helm and you knock all the spokes off, it's going to take longer to repair than that helm ball would last for anyway. And if somebody was there as well, you may well either get a kill, do a lot of damage, or knock them off the ship, causing more disruption than just landing the helm ball itself. This tier list is based on my personal opinion and my experience while playing Sea of Thieves mostly solo, which I think should give you a good view of their potency overall. Let me know in the comments below how you would rank them from a crew point of view, and if you've made it this far, you may as well sub, right? Let's start with the ship Cursed Cannonballs. The barrel ball is definitely at the bottom of the barrel, just because it's so RNG to use. And now I think about it, I don't know if it actually affects the barrels that are on the end of your harpoon. The helm ball is right there with the barrel ball, purely because you can land a cannonball on the enemy helm really easily with a little bit of practice, and it will be much more effective than using the helm ball itself. The rigging ball is hard to place because it's very similar to the anchor ball. On the one hand, it's guaranteed that it's going to raise all of the sails up, and you're not going to be able to drop the sails for a specific amount of time. On the other hand, the ship can still turn. And what I'm doing here really is comparing the rigging ball to the anchor ball. If you use an anchor ball on a sloop, there's a high chance that they're going to catch the anchor, whereas if you use it against a brig or a galleon, the capstan itself is far enough away that it probably won't get caught. I would say the rigging ball is a tier 3. Because the rigging ball is a tier 3, the anchor ball overall is probably better if you're willing to gamble, depending on the ship you're fighting, but it really does depend on the crew you're fighting. The anchor ball is a tier 2. If they hadn't done a wide nerf to all the cannonballs, the peace ball would definitely be much higher than I'm about to put it, but because it's such a short duration and it requires a bit more communication than just using it in the moment, it definitely ranks lower on my list. I'd say the peace ball is a tier 4. Definitely not as useless as the barrel ball and the helm ball, but still not really worth using either. And lastly, the balance ball just causes so much panic, especially on a galleon, and the only thing that you would use other than a ballast ball is a keg, and you can't fire that at a distance yet. The balance ball is definitely a tier 1. Onto the player affecting Cursed Cannonballs. Let's start with the Limp Ball. It doesn't really do a lot other than stop people from jumping off their ship and slows them down a bit. Maybe it'll cause a little bit of panic, but really, it's not really one of the good Cursed Cannonballs. You just use them because you have them, really. The Limp Ball for me is a tier 5. Wherever I put the Jig Ball, the Sleep Ball is going to go as well because they do exactly the same thing, just a different emote. And as I mentioned before, the Sleep Ball does make you lay down, but I don't think that's a big enough difference to really warrant a tier change. I'm really torn between the Jig Ball and the Grog Ball, but I think the Jig Ball and the Sleep Ball just pip the Grog Ball because if they land, you're guaranteed to get the effect that you want from those Cursed Cannonballs. And for that reason, I would say the Jig Ball and the Sleep Ball are both tier 1. The Grog Ball, for that reason, places a very close tier 2. The RNG on the Grog Ball makes it unpredictable. For the most part though, the Grog Ball usually is very effective. Lastly, we're going to talk about the Venom Ball. The Venom Ball, I think it's just very overlooked and used in the wrong situations. It's very rare that I have a Venom Ball fired at me, but I really do just think it is a great Cursed Cannonball to use at the right time. And I mentioned it earlier, the best time to use it is definitely at night time, and then while your ship is turning, try and snipe someone. You'd be amazed at the amount of kills that you do get in that situation. I'm going to place the Venom Ball as a tier 3. You really could argue so many different points with these Cursed Cannonballs. You have to look at them for the guarantees that they give you. in the majority of situations. It's very easy to argue that the helm ball could be tier 1 because they could be heading towards a rock and they'll crash into the rock, then they'll get holes. But then you could argue that the ballast ball is useless on a ship that you haven't already hit. I would definitely like to see them make some changes to the cursed cannonballs overall. You definitely shouldn't be able to catch the anchor when you use an anchor ball, and it should lock your anchor down for a specific amount of time as well. The peace ball needs to be at least doubled in duration. The barrel ball needs to last longer than it would take you to repair 5 holes. I do think that that's where the strength comes from with the barrel ball, is preventing you from repairing your ship. I think that's one of the harder ones to balance for sure. I think the helm ball is working fine as it is. The major issue with the helm ball is that the times where you would use it, you are better off firing another cannonball. It'd be nice to be able to fire the helm ball at a different arc. Perhaps even being able to throw the helm ball would just make that cursed cannonball far more effective. And the Limp ball needs to last longer. I do think that a lot of the timings are off, because with the fights in Sea of Thieves, they're not over quickly for the most part. So the duration of the cursed cannonballs tend to be drops in the ocean when it comes to how long they last versus how long the fight lasts. That's me done talking about cursed cannonballs. I'm really glad that I split the video off so I can talk a bit more in depth about the cursed cannonballs. I really would love to hear what you think on the topic. But I've been ToejahM, and I've been your temporary ship's captain, and I'll see you next week. Boop. Oh, what a shot! Sit down.